Next, from Springfield, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz goes one-on-one with Henry Bayer, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 31. We hear his reaction to Governor Quinn's pension reform package and what he says should be done to raise revenues in lieu of cutting benefits. This runs about 35 minutes.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Henry Bayer, who's the Executive Director of AFSCME. That he has been in that position for now almost 4 decades, right, Henry?
That's correct. Well, with AFSCME that long, yes.
So you've been organizing, you've been overseeing unions, you've been arguing for the working people, as we say, 4 decades. And Illinois is facing this major issue of pension reform. We're taping this 9 days before the session is due to end, the General Assembly. So we're taping it on May 22nd, it's supposed to end on the 31st. So let me ask you, Governor Pat Quinn, longtime Democrat, probably lifelong Democrat, has proposed that the state employees increase pensions, their required employee contributions to pensions, from about 9% to 12%. He's proposed increasing the minimum retirement age from either 55 or 62, depending on how you look at it, to 67. He's proposed essentially knocking out the COLA or substantially reducing the cost of living index. Is it time, Mr. Bayer, is it time for you to say, maybe you should have substantial compromise?
We have been at odds with the governor. I mean, the plan that the governor has put forth is totally unacceptable to a union. It's unfair to our members. We believe it's unconstitutional. And we have been part of a broad coalition of unions representing teachers, firefighters, and police officers, as well as our own members, broad coalition which has stood in strong opposition to what they are trying to do. And I think it's important to step back and to understand how the state got into this position, because I think a lot of people don't realize that every public employee who participates in a state-funded pension plan pays a portion of their salary. Every paycheck goes directly to the pension plan. That is supposed to be supplemented by what the state puts in. But what has happened over the years, rather than making their pension payments, the state has used the dollars they had available for other purposes. And they've built up this tremendous unfunded liability. In this case, as far as the state is concerned, $86 billion. That's $86 billion that they owe.
Excuse me, that's billion with a B. $86 billion. Not
that they owe, that the state owes to its active and retired state and university employees and teachers. That's what they owe. That's what the figures show. And it's because, not because, and also people have to understand, it's not because these pensions are overly generous. The average state employee has a $24,000 pension that they have paid into. For university and teachers, those pensions are higher. I think the average is around $40,000 in the case of teachers, a little less than that for university. But those people get no Social Security. The state doesn't pay, nor do local school boards pay any Social Security on their behalf. The only retirement income these folks have is their pension, and which they have faithfully paid into, but which the state hasn't.
But many people many people outside the public sector get only Social Security. Many of those folks don't have private pensions, and for many, their pensions from Social Security are less than the $24,000 you're talking about. So can you ask those folks to pay higher taxes to support higher pensions than they're getting?
Well, they pay in the case of people who are not on Social Security, teachers and university employees, they pay a higher proportion of their salary into the pension plan than people who are covered by Social Security do. Nope. So they're already paying more. I mean, and the answer is, I mean, I understand that there are a lot of people in the private sector who don't have pensions. We believe they should. We believe that every worker in this country, whether they work in the private sector or the public sector, ought to have a decent pension, ought to have retirement security. And there was a time.
Why don't they have pensions?
Well, why don't they have pensions?
Why those private people
because
don't have pensions?
What we've had in the last 30 years is a tremendous shift in the distribution of income in this country. What's happened is corporations, which used to provide defined pension benefits, 80% of the people in the private sector 30 years ago had a defined pension benefit. Now 20% do. And the reason is these companies have decided, rather than share the productivity increases of their employees with those employees, are keeping it for themselves and for their stockholders. And that's why we've had a growing inequality of income here in this country, and pensions are part of that.
But isn't it the case that for a number of individuals who had pensions, the companies went under, the companies went bankrupt, and as a part of that restructuring, they lost their pension rights, and they've had to adjust. People would say that's unfair, and now people are saying, since private sector employees had to adjust, why shouldn't government employees also adjust?
Well, that's like saying that if somebody went bankrupt, why don't we all go bankrupt? Well, first of all, I mean, I think you're wrong, because in the private sector, if there's a pension guarantee board, and the private, and wait a minute, and the law requires the employers to keep a certain level of funding, and if they don't, the pensions are up to a certain level are guaranteed by the Ty Fainer, who's from the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago, he said this himself. He said, if anybody in the private sector did what these politicians did, then someone would go to jail.
But
someone would have gone to jail.
Right, but Ty would probably agree, and you're right, he is the president of the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago. We'll come back to that. But Ty would probably agree that a number of these private people did go to jail. That is, they did things, and the private employees, you're right, there is a pension benefit guarantee corporation, but as you said, a guarantee is only up to a certain level. So many of those private individuals, that is, many of those employees working for private companies, have had to adjust. They didn't get the pensions they anticipated, and again the question comes back to you, is it time for the public sector employees to adjust?
I think it's time for the private sector companies to adjust. I don't believe, the average CEO makes 340 times what the average worker makes. I don't think the governor should make 340 times what a state employee makes. Do you? Do you think that people ought to have $10 and $15 million salaries as the governor?
I don't think so. Isn't it what the market decides?
No, it's not the market. It's what they decide.
We have a free market. Don't you have a free market?
We have CEOs who pick. Look, we have CEOs who pick their board of directors. That if the stockholders come to a meeting and make a motion, and the stockholders and it passes, they can still do what they want.
Not anymore.
Oh, yes, we do.
Those board members have to be independent. You know
that.
Not,
well, I know, and you know.
They have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders, not to the president of the company.
They do.
And if they break that fiduciary duty, they could go to jail.
And
some of them do.
And some of them should, and more of them should go to jail. But I don't believe. People say, well, that's the way they do it in the private sector. Well, just because they do it we ought to examine, is it fair? Shouldn't people who work all their lives, in this case, people who teach school, people who keep our neighborhood safe, shouldn't they, at the end of their careers, have retirement security? Should we have cops, 67 years old, chasing some felon down a dark alley at night? I don't think we should.
They can work in the office. They could work in the office.
I don't think, no, because now they're moving out in the streets. They don't have enough cops.
Don't you have union employees who work for this union, AFSCME? Do you have people who stay and work until they're 67? Or does everybody retire at 55?
Some do, some don't.
That's my point.
Well, so not everybody who works for the state retires. There are people who work well beyond the normal retirement age who work for the state.
Not so much. That's not true.
The average person who retires from the state of Illinois today is 63 years old.
Okay, but what is your solution? Because you would agree, you said $83 billion unfunded. You would agree it's not a solvent system. You would agree, maybe you would agree that currently for the the General Revenue Fund budget in the state of Illinois is about $33 billion. $7.5 billion goes to retirees, either for health care benefits, either for pension payments, or for paying off bonds that they've incurred for the pensions. So that's almost 25%.
Well,
where's the money going to come for education?
Well, first of all, you have to separate.
Where's the money going to come for health care?
You have to separate out.
It's all going to retirees?
You have to separate out.
And this is what Rahm Emanuel said.
Well, he's wrong. Rahm Emanuel is wrong. I mean,
this is what Pat Quinn said.
Well, Pat Quinn is wrong. They don't represent working people. They're look at, Pat Quinn's been going around the state.
How do you get elected mayor? How do you get elected governor if you don't represent working people?
They don't. I mean,
you supported Pat Quinn.
We did, because he was running against Bill Brady. But now he's doing what we supported him because of what Bill Grady said he'd do. Now Pat Quinn is doing what Bill Grady said he would do.
And I asked Pat Quinn about that. I asked Governor Quinn. You know what Governor Quinn said? I said, you know, Henry Bair says, you know, you've changed your position. He kind of wants his money back because he said you took the money and you changed your position. He said he disagrees. He follows his conscience.
Well,
he's telling us that his conscience says he now thinks he can't have a stable pension system in Illinois unless he makes these changes.
I don't think that he has much of a conscience. To tell people who retired, who were made a promise, who have a constitutional guarantee of that promise, who on average are making $23,000 a year as a state as a retiree, that it's conscionable to cut their pensions after they retired on the basis of a promise that was made to them, to cut their health care after he told them, if you retire, you know, you will have health care benefits subsidized by the state. To do that, to me, that's unconscionable that he's done that.
But what should Governor Quinn do?
What Governor Quinn should do, number one, is he should say, look, I made a big mistake last December. I came to Springfield and said I was anxious to sign a bill to give a $100 million tax break to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange because they only made $900 million last year. So I'm going to give them $100 million. And Sears, he said last December, we need to give them $10 million a year for the next 15 years, $150 million. And they pay their CEO $10 million a year. So in effect, the taxpayers of Illinois are paying some guy $10 million a year. And included in that, the CEO for Sears, if you saw the recent story in Crane's business, they pay over $700,000 a year to pay for charter flights for him to fly back and forth to Pennsylvania where his family lives. That's at taxpayer expense. He should tell those people, let me finish, no more tax breaks. Okay, he should tell them no more tax breaks. Then he should say to the
I'm just reaching for my bat because I can think better with the bat in the hand.
Then he should say to the 2/3 of the corporations in this state that pay no taxes at all, look, the free ride is over. You guys want an educated workforce, you want good roads, you want a good infrastructure, fine, and I'm going to give that to you, but you're going to have to pay for it. You're not paying any corporate taxes now, you're going to have to pay corporate tax. And then he should say, and look, we are restricted here in Illinois. In almost every other state that has a state income tax, it's a progressive income tax. The income tax in Wisconsin, Indiana, and in Missouri all have progressivity to them. We don't have it here. And he should say we need to amend the Constitution and we need to have a progressive income tax so that rich people can pay their fair share. Those, because we have a tax system.
Go back and now it's my turn. Let me raise a few points about this. Because what you seem to be saying here is you can keep those pensions, you can keep the obligations, you can keep everything solvent. What you have to do, sounds to me you're saying this, Henry, is you're saying you should raise the revenue coming into Illinois. You want to raise the state income tax. You want to raise the corporate for individuals, also for corporations. You want to make the income
I want to
tax
raise it on rich people. I don't want to raise it on.
But you know the current code in the state of Illinois.
Well, it has to be changed.
The Constitution doesn't allow you to have a progressive
If the governor had a
tax.
conscience, if he had a conscience, which I'm not sure he does, if he did, instead of saying, I'm anxious to have this bill to cut the taxes to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, he would have stood up and said, look, we need to amend our Constitution. And I am putting the full weight of my office behind a constitutional amendment. I'm asking the General Assembly, I'm asking Speaker Madigan.
It's too late.
It's not too late.
Not for this year. It can't be on the ballot now.
No,
you know
but it can be for 2014.
What are we going to do in 2012, though, for the next 2 years? How are we going to solve this pension problem? They say it gets $7 billion a year worse for each year you do nothing.
No, it doesn't. Well, that's not true. Well, first of all,
Senate President Cullerton, Speaker Mike Madigan.
You asked me a question. If you let me finish. The money is in the budget, and the governor's proposed budget has the money to make the pension payment this year. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important for you to understand that most of the money that's being paid into the pension fund this year is not the cost of the pension, of the benefit that's being earned by the employees. It's the unfunded liability, which they didn't pay in the past. I'll give you a perfect example right here in Illinois. The Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which covers all of local government outside of Chicago and Cook County. They have a benefit structure which is very similar to the state benefit structure. The employees of those employers, like the city of Springfield here or the city of Evanston or Peoria, any place, the employees pay about the same as what state employees pay into it. That pension fund is pretty much 100% funded. And why is that the case? That's the case because the law requires those municipalities and counties that participate to make their payments just the way the employees do every month. But The state doesn't. And I should add, all of the legislation, the governor hasn't performed. The governor, you look at the governor's bill, what he's proposed. He has not proposed going forward that the state would be required to make its payment. The bill they passed.
He says they can't. He says they can't.
Well,
because he wants to take care of, he says more people need to be better educated.
Well,
you've listened to the governor. He says preschool is important. He said right now, this year, you're cutting back on things.
No, he's cutting back.
He's cutting back because he had to make a $7.5 billion contribution to retirees of the state of Illinois. This is what Governor Quinn said.
That's what
I
he
didn't
says.
say this.
Well, Governor Quinn is wrong.
Senate President Cullerton would say this.
If
Speaker Mike Manning.
Then they're all wrong.
All Democrats.
No, well,
the Republican leaders. Redonio, Cross. You're saying everybody's wrong.
Well, I'm saying they're wrong. I do not believe that they should cut.
All the leaders, Democrat and Republican, are wrong, you're saying.
On this issue, absolutely. On this issue, they are entirely wrong. What they're acting unconstitutionally, they're being unfair, and instead of addressing the problem and showing some concern for people who work in public safety, for people who teach schools, who provide other public services, instead of being concerned about them, they're turning their backs on them. They're saying, look, we made a promise to you, we're not keeping the promise. They're saying, look, we know that we may have a constitution that guarantees your benefits, we're not paying those benefits. That's what they're saying.
You remember Obama. We talked about him before the show. Ran for the U.S. Senate, okay? Won for the U.S. Senate. You gave out books, Audacity of Hope, to your staffers. You said, this guy might be president, okay? You respect Barack Obama, right?
I sure do.
You respected him then, you respect him now. 3.5 years as president. What's Barack Obama saying? Is Barack Obama calling up Rahm Emanuel and say, you're doing the wrong thing, you should do the right thing and do what Henry Bear says?
I'm not privy to the conversation.
I don't think he's doing that because, you know, Rahm was his White House chief of staff. So Obama's half responsible for why why Rahm Emanuel became mayor. You know that. He didn't endorse him officially, but he let him run these nice ads that showed Barack Obama saying very nice things about Rahm Emanuel. And at that time, Rahm Emanuel was saying, you know, we're going to have to make adjustments. He didn't deceive the people. He said we're going to have to make adjustments on pensions for city employees. And Barack Obama did not bat him down. This is a man you know and respect, President of the United States, Barack Obama. Is he wrong too?
Well, I don't agree with him on everything. I certainly don't agree with the president on his assessment of Rahm Emanuel. I don't think Rahm Emanuel has been a good mayor, and
But the reality. Okay, let's go to reality. We only have maybe 10 minutes left. We've laid out the problem. You've helped lay out the problem. $83 billion in unfunded liabilities. Quinn says, look, you can't run a government this way. We want to spend more money in education. We want to help low-income people who need more money in education, not less. He said people who need Medicaid, he's having to cut Medicaid anyway. He said, if I don't do this, I'd have to cut it so much more. So these are people, he says, I think he's saying this, and I'm not quoting him verbatim, but we're weighing who can we help. We help low-income people who need educational assistance, who need health care, and then we've got state employees who have pensions, and we're saying just adjust them going forward, prospectively going forward.
No, but that's not his proposal. His proposal.
That's what Quinn says.
No, well, that's what he says. It's not true. Okay, it is not true. He wants the.
That's what Ty Fainer says.
Well, it's not true.
Civic committee, the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago. Well, and you know, Bill Daley is a part of that. Well, Republicans and Democrats, well-respected business leaders, the same thing in the Civic Federation.
Maybe you respect. I have no respect.
You don't respect Bill Daley?
No, I do. No, I do not respect business leaders.
He's a part of the Civic Committee.
I do not respect business leaders who want cops and firefighters and teachers to take cuts in their pay and their benefits, while at the same time they don't pay their fair share of taxes, where they make literally millions of dollars a year. Okay. Miles White, let me give you an example. Miles White from the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club. He says, we got to get rid of defined pension benefits. You know, he has a defined pension benefit whose cash value is over $20 million. You know how long it would take a state employee or a teacher to accumulate $20 million? And what does this guy do? He lives off the taxpayers.
The $20 million wouldn't solve anything.
Well, that's one guy.
$83 billion.
That's one guy.
And there aren't that many guys
That's
that
one guy. You go down through
there aren't many guys that haven't made.
You go down through the list of the Civic Committee and the amount of money they make, and that they're not paying taxes. They're paying a smaller percentage of their income on state taxes than the average citizen is. If you look at the tax structure,
that's not true. That's not true.
It is true. It's absolutely true.
There are some people who earn their money mainly on capital gains. We have a lower tax rate for capital gains than we do for income.
Well,
but their money is taxed before it becomes capital gains as ordinary income. It's a double tax.
No,
when
it's
you
not.
Include, no, before you can get the capital gain, you've got to earn the money, don't you?
Look, I see you got a book here from Milton Friedman.
Would you like it? I'm going to give it to you.
I wouldn't like it.
Just read it. No, take it and read it.
Look,
I'll take any book you give me.
Look,
Henry, any book you give me after the show, I will take it and read it. Will you read this too?
You and Milton Friedman, I'd be glad to read Milton Friedman.
There you go.
You and Milton
Capitalism Freedom comes to you courtesy of the Harlan Institute.
You and Milton Friedman have a view of the world that totally out of sync.
I'm a journalist.
No, you're not a journalist. You have a point of view.
No, I'm talking about Rahm Emanuel's point of view. I'm talking about Clotis's point of view.
You're talking about you're defending.
These are all these people.
You're defending.
How do you deal with it?
You're doing the same thing that they're doing. That's why I criticize them, because they defend rich people.
I'm not
they curry for you. Are no.
This
you're
is
saying,
their point of view.
No. That's your point of view.
How do you deal with it?
I'm telling you how you deal with it. You say, look, we have to have fair taxes. We have to be fair to everybody.
You want to raise the income tax rate. You want to raise the corporate tax rate.
That's what you said. I didn't say that.
You want progressive taxes.
I want progressive taxes.
You want to raise taxes on corporations, and you want to raise taxes on wealthy people. Is that right?
I want to close loopholes.
But how do you stop people from leaving? How do you stop corporations from going to other states?
It's funny you say that, because if
don't you think they do that if you raise taxes?
Well, let me ask you a question. Yeah, they'll do it because
and then the employees won't have jobs.
They'll leave the country. Look, they've already left. Look at Caterpillar.
You can't have employees without employers. Forrest Claypool, well-known Democrat, says that. You know Forrest. You respect Forrest? You can't have employees without employers.
Look, employers are not in business to employ people. Employers are in business to make a buck, right? To make a profit. And if they can make a profit without any employees, they'll do it. No. If they let me finish.
Yes, sir.
If they can make a profit by moving a company to Bangladesh and paying people starvation wages, they'll do it. They're not, they're not in the business of of saying, oh, gee, we just want to employ people.
But they do employ people.
No, well, if they can make a buck on it, if they can make a buck.
The major companies in this country that buy goods overseas employ many people in the United States. You're trying to unionize these people. Or not ask me. Your counterparts are trying to unionize those people.
All these companies that have moved offshore, why have they done it? Because they cared about their employees? They don't care a whit about their employees. They'll move out in a minute if they can make a nickel more in Bangladesh or Mexico or any place else in the world. That's what they're
unless they
about.
Can provide a product that people want, including your employees, including your members.
No.
Unless they can do that, they're out of business. They're competing with companies in Bangladesh. They're competing with companies in Germany. So if people have lower taxes, if people have lower taxes in other states, other countries, they'll go out of business, and then and the government won't have money, and the government employees will have to leave their jobs. So the private sector, government sector, nobody's immune from the free market. You understand that?
Oh yes, yeah. No. Miles White, he's immune from the free market.
No, it catches up with him too.
No, they couldn't find someone who would work for $13 million. They have to pay someone $23 million.
Anybody's getting more than they're worth. The market catches up with them.
That's not
Milton
true.
Friedman.
That's not true. That's what Milton Friedman said.
The greatest economist of the 20th century.
You think that these guys, these bankers on Wall Street, who tank this economy, who make millions of dollars a year, that the free market caught up with them? The free market will never catch up.
Bill Daley supported NAFTA.
The free market.
Did Bill Daley support NAFTA?
I'm not talking about NAFTA. You're changing the subject. These guys are immune to the market. No matter. Look at Goldman Sachs. Look at all these bankers that drove the economy. Now they're getting their money right back. They're getting $15-20 million a year, and you think that's good. I think it's bad. No, you think it's good. No, you're not a journalist.
I am a journalist.
You think it's good.
You're on the left. I'm asking questions from the right. I got somebody on the right. I'll ask questions from the left.
You think it's good.
Get somebody from the right here. I'll show you.
I don't think it's good that a guy like Miles White can make $25 million a year while teachers and firefighters and cops are having their pensions cut. I don't think that this is what this country is about. I believe that this country has always been. Let me finish. Would you let me finish? Okay. I mean, I'm really getting angry. You're really getting to the point.
No, I'm just going to say we only have 5 minutes left, so I want you to address some things.
I want you to give me 5 minutes. Okay. I want to address what I want to address. Because I'm really getting. Okay. You're not. I've been interviewed by a lot of people with a different point of view than I have, and I've never seen an interviewer who's been as rude as you've been. I think that most people in this country believe in fairness. I believe that most people in this country think there ought to be equity. That they don't think that the public sector ought to be like the private sector, that we ought to have a governor or a senator or a president who makes 343 times what the average worker makes. I don't think that they feel that way. I don't think that, I don't believe that anybody is worth $25 million a year. And I believe if that's what the company wants to pay Miles White, that we can't stop him, but I think that his income ought to be taxed. If you look back at the history of this country, if you look back at the economy in this country, from post-World War II, 45 to now, if you look, the time that our country was most prosperous, when that prosperity was spread among the most people, was from right after the war till the early 70s. That was a time when a rising tide was lifting all boats. That was a time when tax rates were much higher for rich people than they are.
What period are you talking about?
I'm talking about from 45 to 73.
Okay.
During that time, when there was productivity gains, that was widely shared by everybody. What's happened since that time?
Can I say one thing?
No, let me finish.
Okay.
What's happened since that time, since from the 70s till now, is that productivity gains aren't being shared. That more and more of the money is going to the people at the very, very top, and good jobs are not, are hard to come by. People used to be able to, it used to be a time if someone worked for a company that they made a living wage, they could afford a home. They could afford a car, maybe a vacation once in a while, maybe even educate their kids. Now more and more those jobs are disappearing because a lot of greedy corporations decided, well, we can make, even though we can make a buck here, we can make a few more bucks in Mexico or Bangladesh or somewhere else. And now what we have is a lot of people who are working very hard, not making very much money, so they're not paying very much taxes, and it's dragging down the entire economy. This has always been, in the United States, historically, this was a consumer-driven economy. That what made the economy go was the fact that people had money in their pockets to spend. Now, because corporations have gotten the upper hand and people no longer, there are not enough people who are making enough money to sustain our society in the way that we had become accustomed to between 45 and 73, we're all suffering for it. And we will continue to suffer as long as we allow income to flow to the people at the very top of the economic pyramid.
Can I just ask you to address one thing?
Sure.
Because we only have a few minutes left, and I want you to address it. I don't want to address it. Our viewers here, people watching this on the Illinois Channel, watching it on Public Affairs, watching it in Chicago and Rockford and Aurora and Cairo and Bloomington, across the state of Illinois, they want to ask you if you can tell them specifically what you would ask Democrats Cullerton and Madigan, the two major leaders in the Senate and the House, two major Democratic leaders, and Radonio and Cross, the two major Republican leaders in the House and the Senate, and Governor Pat Quinn, the four tops, if you will, with the governor. What should they do over the next 9 days? Because do you think, let me just finish the question, do you think they can and should resolve this matter, that is pension reform, in the next 9 days? Or do you think they should leave the General Assembly, go about the campaigns, or do you think they should go into overtime? And if you think they should resolve it, how do they do it? Because Quinn seems committed to the things we've talked about, which you disagree with, and I respect that. I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I'm saying he seems committed to that, and we didn't even talk about cost shifting. Cullerton seems committed to that. Madigan, that they want to take the costs of pensions that local governments passed and imposed on the state taxpayers, they want to shift it back. That's part of their solution. That doesn't seem to be going so well. So unless if you don't raise the employee contribution, if you don't raise the retirement age, if you don't reduce the COLAs, if you don't do cost shifting back to these local governments, and all you do is say in 2 years you'll have a constitutional amendment that will allow you to have if you pass it, allow you to have a progressive tax code, allow you to generate more revenue, allow you to close the loopholes for corporations. Over the next 2 years, do you do anything? And over the next 9 days, can you do anything to solve this problem?
Okay. That's, we are, in fact, in discussions with the legislative leaders and representatives of the governor, trying to seek a solution that we believe is constitutional and fair to our members. We have been meeting with them over a period of several weeks. We continue to meet with them. The governor's plan is a total overreach as far as we are concerned. We understand that even though we did not create this problem, that again, our members, every paycheck, pay a portion of their salary into the pension fund, that the problem was created by the politicians who failed to do that. We don't want the pension funds to go bankrupt, and that's why we are seeking a solution. Can it be done in 9 days? I don't know if it can be done. Maybe it could be done in 9 days, but we are committed to trying to seek a solution that is fair. But what we do reject is this attempt by the governor, and apparently with the support from legislative leaders, is to put the entire onus of the $83 billion that they didn't pay. Not that we didn't pay. We paid what the law required us to pay. They didn't pay what was required of them. To put that entire burden on the 300,000 teachers, state cops, and other public servants, we think it's totally unfair. We think it's unconstitutional, and we think that most people would agree with that. Politicians made a promise. When people were hired, they said, these are the terms and conditions of your employment. To me, it's not any different if you went to work for an employer and the employer said, well, we're going to put you on direct deposit, and we'll just send your check to the bank every week. And so you think, well, the money has been sent to the bank, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, one day you find out that they haven't been sending the money to the bank, that they haven't. This is the same thing. They said, we're going to give you your paycheck, and we're going to make a pension payment, so when you retire, you're going to be able to have your pension. Lo and behold, we find out they weren't making their required contributions, and now they're asking us to pick up the full tab. And we are not going to pick up the full tab. You can't ask teachers to do that. You can't ask state police to do that. You can't ask other caregivers to do that.
Well, we're getting somewhere, and we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Henry Baer, Executive Director of AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, the major public sector union in the state of Illinois, and perhaps throughout the country. Would you say that, Henry?
Well, we are the largest public sector.
And you're a good sport for coming here, and you've answered some tough questions, and we couldn't have this show without you, so we very much appreciate you taking the time. And you know who very much appreciates it as well is our viewers, people watching this on the Illinois channel, watching it on Public Affairs. You're really a good person for taking this time, and we appreciate it. Let me just home, we've made some progress. You've given some thoughts, extensive thoughts on how you would solve this, but can you get more detailed? In the next 9 days, would you be willing to make some compromises and recommend that the unions, in addition to AFSCME, say, well, perhaps the retirement age should go up somewhat, but not to 62, well, 67. Perhaps the employee contribution go up somewhat, but not by 3%. Perhaps the COLA should be modified, but not exactly in the way Governor Quinn has suggested. Would you be willing to make some compromises if the Democratic and Republican leaders of the General Assembly and the governor also make compromises?
Well, we have been willing to compromises, and they know that. As I told you, we've been in discussions. We understand that although we didn't create the problem, we're going to have to be part of the solution, and we are willing to make compromises. What we're not willing to do is have this entire burden dumped on us.
But you'll make some of those that I talked about, some compromises.
We have said that we are willing to work out a solution, that we are willing to make compromises. The governor and the legislative leaders are fully aware of that. We've said that publicly on many occasions. We've told it to them privately, and we've been working with them. It's just that they want to, in our view, avoid responsibility and put the entire burden on our members. We don't think that's fair, and we won't stand for it.
Are you optimistic that in the next 9 days you can reach a compromise solution that significantly, that if not solves completely, makes a significant step forward to solve?
Well, I'm optimistic that it could happen. I don't think it, because there's been no indication on the part of the governor or the legislative leaders that they're willing to move very far from what the governor announced, whatever it was, a month or so ago. That they seem unwilling to compromise. They seem unbending. They don't really want to own up to their responsibility for the mess that we have, and they're trying to blame the problems that we have with our pension fund on people who aren't responsible.
You're pretty good at counting noses. Do you think that Madigan and Cross can put on the votes they need to pass this over your objections if you don't reach agreement? Do you think that Redonio, and Cullerton could put on the votes needed to pass this if they don't reach agreement with you in the Senate?
It's impossible. You know that the leaders in the legislature have tremendous power over their members. We think that's unfortunate. We hope that the members will listen to their constituents rather than listening to their leaders. After all, it is their constituents whose interests they are supposed to represent. We've had a lot of our members coming down here to Springfield to talk to their legislators about this problem. So I would hope that legislators wouldn't vote for any pension bill unless it has the support of the unions that are trying to work for a solution. And I certainly hope they won't vote for any pension bill that doesn't guarantee, whatever the pension benefit level may be in that bill, that the state will be required to make their payments going forward. That's how we got into this mess. That the reason that the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund doesn't have this problem is because those local governments have to make the payments, and I think we need to keep the politicians on a tight leash, and there has to be an absolute guarantee that those payments are going to be made, whatever the level, whatever it might require for the funding, that they have to be made.
Thank you so much, Henry Bear.
Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.